Welcome to CUNY Online Unscripted, a podcast by CUNY Online. Our show explores the future of online education at CUNY and beyond. Today's episode is about authentic assessments in online courses and an overview of how authentic assessments can impact students' learning. I'm Ashley Park, an instructional designer here at CUNY Online, and I'm the host of today's episode. I'm very excited to welcome Allison Siminovsky from Baruch. Allie, can you tell us a little about yourself for our listeners and also tell us a little bit about the course?
Sure. So I am a lecturer in the psychology department at Baruch, specializing in industrial organizational psychology. And I'm also an adjunct assistant professor at the Marx School at Baruch in their online Masters of Public Administration program. I'm a very big believer in hands-on learning and in doing. And when I got into online learning, which kind of just happened, I didn't actively seek it out. I really thought, how can I do this in a way that can bring those hands-on experiences, even though we're not sitting together in the same room or even live on Zoom. We're not together, period.
What makes an assessment feel authentic?
An assessment feels authentic when it involves what I'll call actually doing the work. So most of my research has focused on testing, and interestingly enough, I steer away from testing in my classes pretty much at this point. An authentic assessment involves actually doing the skills, using the skills, and applying the concepts, not just answering questions about the concepts. It's not just recall, it is the doing. And it makes assignments more fun for students, frankly, more fun for me to grade. And it's really easy for me to see the evolution in students' thinking and skills over the course of a semester with authentic assessment, because it also gives them a little more room to play around. It's not as much about right and wrong.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing is it gives students a lot of agency. It's more fun because it's more relevant. Well, tell me a little bit more about how you've seen students evolve through authentic assessment.
Sure. Well, first of all, I've seen opinions change that I don't know would change solely based on reading an article or reading 10 articles, but rather having to do it yourself and encountering the problems yourself gives you an idea of what's going on. I did teach an HR class in this program before, and one of the first things we did was a discussion board saying, just what's your opinion of HR? Be honest. And most of them had very negative opinions about human resources. And by the end of the semester, by actually learning about what are the struggles HR professionals deal with, what's in scope for HR professionals, and what's required to do the work, which they learned because they were doing the work, the perspectives were very, very different by the end of the semester in terms of I was relying on a stereotype and I was relying solely on my experience and what people talk about. I didn't know what I was talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Because this really gives them a safe space to experiment and practice without real world consequences, even though they're doing tasks that are similar to real world.
Yes.
And then let's delve into the specifics of the authentic assessment that you had in this course. It's the hiring simulation. Am I right?
There are a whole bunch of authentic simulations. The students this semester actually just completed the hiring simulation last week.
Oh, can you walk me through it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the goal of this lesson is to learn about implicit bias. And there's lots of ways to teach about implicit bias. I do a whole host of other assessments and activities as well. But this is broken up over several parts. So the first part, the students get 5 anonymous resumes for an undisclosed job, which isn't super realistic. But to get the lesson across, that's what I need them to do. And I have them rank order individually these 5 applicants in terms of who would you hire to work at this agency, and briefly explain why. And then in the online format, I ask them, come back to it the next day. Take a second to step away. I then share the job description and ask them to re-rank. Some of them don't re-rank, and I ask them to explain why. And then later on, they do a reflection. And in the reflection, they identify things, and I give some hints also, such as Well, I assumed the oldest person wasn't going to know how to use technology as effectively. I looked at the name of this person's school, which was Ivy League,
Mhm.
and decided, well, they're going to be excellent because they went to an Ivy League school. This person wasn't educated in the United States and they didn't use as advanced vocabulary. So I assumed they wouldn't be able to handle it. And students realize, even coming in with several weeks of background in this class, it's very easy to fall into these traps because we all have implicit bias. It's
Yeah.
implicit, it's in the name. We all have it. And it's a really great way for them to see, oh, look at that. I'm still applying everything I learned, and it's still not something I can escape.
Mhm.
And many of us are going to be in a situation where we're involved in hiring someone. So it's good practice there, but also it's a really great way to get the point home that implicit bias exists, even when you're talking about not doing it.
What I really love about that lesson is that it really walks students through step by step by first having them do and rank the resumes. Then you have them take the implicit bias test and read an article about implicit bias. And then you have them re-rank them after learning what implicit bias is. And then you have them reflect together in a discussion board.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. And when I did this live, I remember one student said at the end, I cannot believe we just talked about all of this and I did all the things I said I wouldn't do 20 minutes ago.
mhm.
And that's why I really wanted to find a way to make this work asynchronously as well, because the students got so much value out of it in a live setting, and it seems that they got value out of it in an asynchronous setting as well.
Oh, what did they say about it for the asynchronous version?
That it involved a lot of thinking and it involved a lot of, oh, shucks, realizing you made a mistake and having to go back and think about it, and also just applying it to real experiences you've been in.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's another great thing about authentic assessment is you can relate it to your own past experiences and reframe them and think of them differently with a better understanding of the dynamics that were at play.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, we're not talking about this specifically, but I just want to mention that the other great thing about this course is you have them draw upon their own experience and knowledge for a lot of like the discussion questions. Or
Mhm.
is this the course where you have them do a career reflection, or that's the other one?
That was a different course.
That was the
Yeah.
other one. Yeah. But I mean, you make it part of your teaching philosophy to really do that. And I
Yes.
think it really enriches the course and also makes the authentic assessments feel then more authentic.
I try and I want to recognize one, not everyone's taking a class they have a tremendous interest in. So you can't go in from the perspective of, okay, everyone's really excited to be here and they really want to learn what I have to tell them.
Hmm.
So encouraging them to rely on their past experiences is a great way to get people engaged and to see this does apply to you.
Right. Yeah.
Even in my harder science classes, I have them reflect on their past experiences in order to frame the concepts we're learning in class, and it makes them a lot more approachable.
Hmm. So, and can you give us an example of how you can do that in a science class?
Yeah, so when I am teaching research methods, psychological research methods, and we learn about the concept of validity, which is a very, very, very important concept in research and specifically around assessment, I ask them before I teach them anything about it, before I even use the word validity, recall a testing scenario from your past. It could have been an interview, it could have been the SAT, it could have been a test you took last week or a paper you turned in last week. What do you think they were trying to measure? What do you think they did measure? And what was the experience like for you?
Hmm. Yeah, because
They
everyone's
can,
been measured and everyone's taken one of those tests before.
yeah. And that helps them to, when I do introduce the formal concepts, it helps them frame them in terms of their own experiences and makes it a lot more digestible.
Exactly, because you're anchoring in prior knowledge.
Hmm.
Yeah. And then What advice would you give to educators interested in moving away from traditional assessments like exams and essays?
One, I'd really encourage it. For me, it's been a really great experience, and I've received proactive positive feedback from students. There was one paper recently that someone wrote. Mine is double the length it was supposed to be because I was having so much fun thinking about this. I'm serious, that happened. And that's wow. But in terms of other advice, I'd say you have to really think about structure very carefully. With a straightforward paper or straightforward test, oftentimes the instructions are very much built in as part of how you design it. You have to be a lot more careful. You have to really think, what is every question I could conceivably get? I'll often run them by a friend who is not in academia. Tell me what you would do. Walk me through
Mhm.
how you'd approach this assignment. And I also, I make a point of asking professionals in various fields, does this resemble something you would do? I ask friends that have employees, what do you wish your employees came in with? And try to incorporate that too. So the more
Yeah.
you could do, it's never going to be perfectly realistic, but the more you could do to help them build skills they need to help the students build these skills is going to make these assessments even richer. And they're going to try harder when they know it's for them.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is, the thing about designing an asynchronous course is you really have to anticipate all the questions before you get them. But your advantage is you've taught this course in person before, so you know what those questions are. And I think it's so powerful that you've gone out to people in the field and asked them, is this a real thing? And I think whether your students know that you did that or not, they're going to feel that and appreciate that in the care that you took to set up this assignment because it is more set up than an essay or an exam.
Well, what's interesting is they mention it. They do notice. Um, they've said, in evaluations that only come to me, so they do refer to me as she, which is kind of funny because I'm the only one reading it anyway, that she works really hard to come up with assignments that we'll enjoy and that we'll learn from. And going through lots and lots of years of schooling, I studied so hard for so many tests and wrote so many papers that as soon as I turned it in, everything was gone. The goal of these assignments is so that you can take this with you, even if you don't go into this field, even if you never think about this again. There is going to be something you got out of it because you are doing.
Exactly.
And they notice that.
Yeah, I'm sure they do. I remember ones back from when I was in high school for bio, I had to go out in into my backyard and find leaves and identify all of them. And to this day, I can still point to a tree and say, "Oh, that's a tulip tree." But I
Mhm.
only know like five trees. I only know the five trees that I did the project on.
Look, I was an undergrad at Baruch many years ago, and I had to take an operations management class. And I don't remember the professor's name, unfortunately, but he'd do for each topic a lecture. And then the next two or three classes, we'd do an applied project. And that was the whole semester. And I loved it. And even though I've never worked in or with operations management, I remember a lot of it. And this was, decades ago. And it was also just, I looked forward to the class.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think um in this day and age where students they have so many things competing for their attention, it's
Mhm.
really powerful to hear that something that you're doing is getting more out of them than you anticipated, right? I did double the work that I thought I would do for this.
It feels really good. And, also in general, as a host, I want people to enjoy the time they're spending with me. And it seems like they're getting a lot out of these assignments and they're actually enjoying them.
Right. And you're having fun.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
It makes the job a lot more fun for me. Does it take longer to grade these things than would a multiple choice test? Yes, a lot longer. And furthermore, a big argument you hear against asynchronous learning is there's no personalization and da, 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 da. You hear a lot of it. With these assignments, I do get to know them even if I never meet them,
Yeah.
even if I
But in a
never have a
different way.
conversation. Yes, in a different way. But the
Hmm.
personal touch is still there.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think you really can have that very human experience, but you just have to be prepared that it's going to come in different forms. You're going to get a text from students. You might like, they might send you a picture,
Mhm.
right?
You have to be a lot more specific with a lot of things. You
Hmm.
have to say this needs to be done by this date, and part two needs to be done by this date. And here is going to be the problem if you are late on part one. You have to think it through more in a way that's helped me in my in-person classes, frankly. It's made me a lot more thoughtful and deliberate.
Right. Yeah. Oh, tell me a little bit about that. How has it worked the other way? How has the async versions affected the synchronous versions?
I go out of my way to provide really specific instructions, and I'm still not great at it, as many of my students will let you know. But I really work very hard to make these as question proof. Not that there's anything wrong with questions, but I want you to go into it with confidence. And I work harder to do that in my classes. I have better rubrics in my in-person classes than I used to because of the need to be as specific online. And I'm also a lot more direct with my students about this is what I am looking to get. This is why I'm giving you this assignment in those words. Because in online learning, you can't assume they're going to pick up on it based on what you're saying because you're not necessarily saying anything. And I found students really benefited from it based on what they told me. So now I'm doing it in person too.
Yep, that's great. Yeah. And I think it, just streamlines things and reduces frustration, cognitive load for students
Hmm.
as they're going through this. All right, Ali. So I think I could keep talking to you all day. But just to wrap up, is there any last piece of advice that you would give for a professor thinking about incorporating authentic assessment into their course?
I would say don't be afraid of doing it. And what I have learned from creating a number of authentic assessments is start out with a harebrained idea. Don't worry about it being realistic at first. Do that after. Think about in a dream world, what would this assessment look like? What would I have them do? If I didn't have to grade them and it was just for the experience and I had limitless resources, what would this look like? And then scale back from there.
Oh, that's great advice. It's kind of like you start with a big hunk of marble and you start,
Chip away.
chipping into it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Allie.
Thank you,
Um,
Ashley.
and that marks the end of our episode. So appreciate you for coming on the podcast today, and thanks for your contributions to enhancing online learning at CUNY.
Thank you for having me. Take care.